Alright guys, so let me get this straight. Pharaoh has pre-order cosmetic packs for the first time in the series, a narrow, underrepresented campaign map, Bronze Age collapse but with little mention of the Sea People invaders so far, gimmicky features that make little impact to gameplay like dynamic weather or an arbitrary outpost system, a tech tree that buffs up resource production, battle effectiveness without any real technological or cultural progression, a lack of trade as a major mechanic in an era known for the first major trading network in the Mediterranean, immortal faction leader focused campaign gameplay and narrative design, the same bland, uninteresting battles, especially with problems like unit collisions still present, and $60 for less than half a Bronze Age Total War nobody asked for. On the plus side, there are some great campaign customization options, including for the AI, which should be interesting, unique new victory conditions and mechanics, detailed political systems, the resource system from Troy, which was pretty good, and returning features like unit banners and standard bearers, wall sappers and unit formations, kind of, battle fire effects, general bodyguards, and beautiful looking city battle maps, even if the ultra unit size is only 120. But to be honest, regardless of what's happening in Warhammer 3 and its latest DLC Shadows of Change, I, as a fan and player of mainly historical Total War games, am not happy with how Total War Pharaoh is shaping up to be. The developers have mentioned a few times an objective of creating the ultimate Bronze Age game in Total War, but seemingly without key cultures like the Minoans, Mycenaeans, and Thebes, proto-Greek city-states that took the first full frontal assault of the Sea Peoples and were pretty much wiped out, without the Mesopotamian cultures of Babylon, Assyria, or Elam, who definitely were affected by the events of the Bronze Age collapse, even if to a much smaller degree, or other local cultures in the immediate area like the Ugarit or the Mitanni. Will they be locked behind a future DLC? Maybe, but that doesn't matter. They're not here at launch. The fact is, many Total War players out there, including myself, are looking at this campaign map right now and thinking, for a whopping $60, that's just not good enough. Roughly 180 regions, which is similar to Rome 2 or Attila, packed into a small sliver of the colorful and vibrant Bronze Age world that includes just 3 of the major powers at the time, littered with little towns and regions I have no context for as I'm playing and conquering versus not factions, but essentially the Warhammer legendary lord formula of right. This guy's a ranged faction using a bow and chariots, this guy's a defensive faction using heavy infantry, so on and so forth. Hopefully you can tell I'm a major fan of the Bronze Age period. I mean, I've been talking about the Rome 2 Age of Bronze mod for months and months now, but what I see here in Pharaoh is just not that at all. Trade, for one, is a mechanic that just looks completely forgotten about. The Minoans, a major trading power in the region, are completely missing. Bronze wasn't produced without copper or tin, both of which were sourced in different areas, and the trading network that could have been worked on, established, plundered, or defended by the player is non-existent here. We could have had sea trade nodes if we had even a little bit of a naval feature, but no, it's fine. We'll just leave anything naval to the elusive sea peoples who invade the cradle of civilization via the sea. Diplomacy is another one. Pharaoh uses the Troy resource system. You trade things like food and stone for non-aggressions and alliances or other resources, and yet this is all set during a major upheaval in the known world with major civil war where a more in-depth diplomatic system could have been a game changer for the campaign design. Bring back the Three Kingdoms diplomacy system. Let Ramses make a coalition of Egyptian leaders to take down the aging pharaoh, or bring back messengers or diplomats from other earlier games where, especially with the Sea People's invasion, diplomatic messages and brokered deals could easily be a race against time. Now, there is a court system that does look kind of similar to the Three Kingdoms diplomacy. It does give you options to engage with other factions that are outside of what you would normally get in a historical Total War. At least that's something, but still, it's very limited in scope and what could have been done here in Pharaoh. And then there's the building trees. I mean, honestly, Zerkovich in his review praises the building tree for having 7 different areas. That's way more than the dumbed down system in the Warhammer games, which is technically true, but we shouldn't be comparing Pharaoh to Warhammer. We should be comparing it to previous historical games. And what the building tree here shows is that there's very little in Pharaoh that is economy or empire building. The list of buildings on your screen now are all the buildings that the Western Roman Empire could build in Attila Total War, from administration to military upgrade to sanitation to farms to various levels and types of industry and religions, etc., etc. The Bronze Age has a vast array of opportunities for building trees just like this, but instead we have a subpar building system that favors really small buffs like +10 wood production or +5 legitimacy. The only aspect of Pharaoh's campaign that has me mildly excited is the one area no content creator has properly been able to talk about yet, or the one area that CA really hasn't revealed any information about: the actual mechanics that revolve around preparation for and surviving the Bronze Age collapse, how the Sea Peoples will be invading, and what the player really has in terms of capabilities and options to defeat them. There are layers of gameplay mechanics that start from picking a royal tradition, a set of deities, and using various faction commands, all of which basically gives buffs to various stats, all leading you to defend the pillars of civilization. All of this does seem like a very good place to start to give you genuine depth to the long-term view of campaign progression. But from what I could see in Zerkovich's review, the Sea Peoples kind of just show up with a few armies here and there, which so far anyway seems very, very underwhelming. And then there are the battles, guys. Now, for a lot of people here, the problem is unit variety, which, let's be honest, they're really coming from the Warhammer games, so they're used to the most unit variety the series has ever and probably will ever see. That's not the problem here. Shogun 2 had very little unit variety and yet is regarded as one of the best games in the series when it comes to battles. The real problem here is gameplay. Units look like they have the same collision issues of previous games. We have a health bar for armor now that just seems so unnecessary and just makes battles more arcadey than ever. And yet again, we have battles that are lacking when it comes to tactical depth. That's not because of unit diversity, that's because chariots are basically going to be overpowered, ranged units are going to be incredibly powerful, especially when defending sieges, and melee units, as always, are going to be melting very quickly. We have dynamic weather, which apparently happens once a battle and affects both the player and the opponent, so kind of a gimmicky feature. We have small land battles apparently, so little room for maneuverability, and extremely large siege maps that look great, but with an ultra unit size of 120 look a bit too big. From the same lack of realism that plagued Troy, especially when you compare it to battle visuals we had in earlier games in the series like Attila or Thrones, to the fire effects or newish unit formations, which again, great, but no one's really talked about how big a difference they make to gameplay. Pharaoh battles just look underwhelming. There's nothing special here so far, and to be honest, it just adds to this nagging feeling that yet again, the requests of the fanbase are largely being ignored. Now, all of this, of course, is my own interpretation of the gameplay. This is all personal opinion, but the community, as far as I can see, is also going through 3 main issues with perception around the game. Pharaoh is extremely limited in scope for an overall experience that supposedly is aiming to deliver the definitive Bronze Age game. Pharaoh is not Medieval 3 or Empire 2, the main requests of the historical player base for God knows how long, and Pharaoh is clearly a little Total War, like Total War Saga Troy, but with the price of a big Total War. And this last point, coupled with previous experiences around promised DLCs for 3 Kingdoms, the launch failure of games we've not forgotten, like Rome 2, Unoptimized Attila, or the buggy and brain-dead Empire, means that unless you're explicitly interested in the Bronze Age and specifically playing as either Egypt, the Hittites, or Canaan, this game is pretty much a no-go. The reality is $60 for half a Bronze Age game with promised DLCs is a joke, but to slap on cosmetic packs as well, to offer up an early access weekend to players with pre-orders, CA is clawing at straws to make the pre-orders as enticing as possible here, and that shows corporate level desperation and total disregard for community goodwill, as Legend likes to call it. If you like what you see here and the price is no issue, go ahead. I'm not stopping you. That's totally your prerogative. You can do what you want with your money. But I shudder at the thought that according to CA, Pharaoh is supposed to be the next major historical game when we've had epics like the scale of Empire Total War, like proper End of Civilizations as done in Attila, or Shogun 2, a game with similar scope as Pharaoh, but done with far better strategic gameplay depth and tactical battle design. Maybe I'm being too harsh, and maybe there's hope yet that Pharaoh will get some more hammer treatment of expanding the campaign map, or that planned campaign DLC will have great cultures that are missing here, but the fact is, CA post-launch support has been a very mixed bag at best, and I'm not buying into a game with the hope that they'll add what should already be here in the release of the build. Now, I realize I've changed my tune on Pharaoh recently. I was keeping a pretty open mind, but the latest reveals yesterday showed this isn't what most historical Total War fans want. This is just what CA thinks it can sell enough of in the short term, and I'm not buying it. And that's it for today, guys. This video has essentially been a culmination of all my thoughts and feelings regarding Pharaoh, supposedly the next big historical Total War. And while I'm still going to get access to the game to give it a proper, genuine chance, what I see so far is not filling me with much confidence, and I wanted to share that with you all. I really hope you enjoyed this video or found it informative. If you did, give it a like and let me know what you think of Total War Pharaoh so far. Will you be buying and playing the game? Do you think I'm being too harsh? Let me know in the comments below. Subscribe for more Total War content just like this, and thanks for watching, guys. I'll see you next time.